The Crinan Canal is one of Scotland's most picturesque shortcuts. The 9-mile waterway from Ardrishaig to Crinan runs through Mid-Argyll's spectacular landscapes and was the brainchild of entrepreneurs in the late 1700s. Trade and industry were flourishing at the time, but roads hadn't kept pace, so the demand for more efficient transport led to a network of canals and fleets of coastal vessels all over Britain. However, the hazardous voyage around the Kintyre Peninsula from Glasgow to the Highlands and Islands left West Coast communities isolated and unable to benefit from the fruits of the new industries. It also meant their own produce couldn't be transported easily to the lowland markets. A short canal that linked the Clyde with the Atlantic coast was the obvious solution, and it changed the lives of many people. Fishing boats now brought their catches closer to the growing towns and cities. Remote villages could receive regular coal supplies, and folk could travel more quickly and safely. The canal created many jobs and a new prosperity for the West Highlands. The great engineer James Watt surveyed the route in 1771, but construction work didn't start until 1794. That's when a company headed by the Duke of Argyll raised enough funds. They got John Rennie, who was a much respected technical innovator, to lead the project, but it was fraught with difficulties. There wasn't enough money. Labour was short, and the hard, metamorphic rocks caused lots of problems. When the canal opened in 1801, it was unfinished and poorly built. They had to keep water levels low to protect the weak canal banks, but a series of breaches in the embankment drove the owners deeper into debt. The government had to intervene, and it employed the renowned civil engineer Thomas Telford to survey the canal again and to draw up a list of repairs and improvements. The company carried out the work, and the Crinan Canal finally became fully operational in 1817. The leisurely journey to Crinan begins at Ardrishaig on the west side of Loch Gilp. After the canal was built, its trade and passengers helped to transform Ardrishaig from a collection of houses into the thriving village it is today. For many years, it was one of Scotland's busiest herring ports. In August 1847, Queen Victoria, that great traveller, began her journey along the canal from here as part of her tour of Scotland. Her 2-hour voyage sparked a mini-tourism boom, and the Crinan Canal became part of the popular royal route. The Linnet began sailing in 1865 and was the most popular vessel on the canal. Its twin propellers were driven by steam, and it sailed during the summer months, carrying up to 300 passengers. Photographs show them crammed like sardines on her decks. The stone building beside the towpath near Loch 4 houses an ingenious device for dealing with excess water in the canal. It's called an automatic water waster and was designed by a man called John Groves and built in 1895. Inside, a rocker arm has a bucket at one end and a plug at the other. When the water in the canal reaches its maximum level, it spills through a pipe into the bucket. This tips the rocker arm, which then lifts the plug and lets the water flow through a sluice pipe into Loch Gilp. Boats enter the canal at the Sea Loch in Ardrishaig and climb through 4 locks before enjoying an uninterrupted journey all the way to Cairnban. Another 4 locks here allow boats to climb to the summit reach of the canal, which is 21 metres above sea level. The slow ascent of the boats through the Cairnban locks gave passengers time to disembark and stretch their legs. Many of them visited the Cairnban Hotel, which was built at the same time as the canal. There are several reservoirs in the woodlands of the Knapdale Hills, which feed the Summit Reach, and the Loch of Arran, a small holding reservoir built to increase the amount of water supplying the Dunardry Loch flight. Just below Loch 9 at Dunardry, you can see the walls of the linnet shed, where the steamer was kept over the winter months and given her annual overhaul. Loch 13, at the foot of the Dunardry flight, looks across Moynavor, the Great Moss. This raised peat bog is a national nature reserve because of the important plants and creatures that live in the wetland. If you look northeast, you'll see Dunard Fort, where the ancient kings of Dalriada were crowned amid a landscape rich in archaeology. The sheer number of New Stone Age and Bronze Age standing stones, burial cairns and rock carvings in Kilmartin Glen make it one of the most important prehistoric landscapes in Britain. At Bellanoch, the canal runs alongside the Ad estuary before skirting round the headland to the sea loch at Crinan. The Crinan Basin used to shelter fishing boats unloading herring, which were taken along the canal to Ardrishig smokehouses. This is puffer country, famous for the doughty little steam-driven cargo boats that took coal and other supplies from the Clyde to the islands and brought back kelp and whisky. 100 years ago, this area was a hive of activity on and around the canal. The last passenger boat was replaced by a coach service in 1929, and cargo vessels that were too big for the canal began sailing around the Kintyre Peninsula. Despite less commercial traffic, the canal's locks and bridges were upgraded in the 1930s, and this, together with constant maintenance, has helped to attract the leisure and pleasure craft that British Waterways Scotland welcome every year to the canal. The Crinan Canal's heritage is now protected, and it's designated as a scheduled monument. Today, it acts as a hub for tourism. It's not just a waterway, it's a focal point for visiting the wider area. With the outstanding heritage of Kilmartin Glen to the north, and the delightful native woodlands of Knapdale to the south, both provide memorable opportunities for walkers and cyclists. In the summer, the towpath is busy with visitors on foot and on wheels, enjoying the stunning scenery and wildlife, and watching boats of all kinds pass by. All along the canal, the activity of the basins and lochs contrasts with the long stretches of peace and tranquility. This has to be Britain's most captivating shortcut.